Hello, welcome again. This is second unit, the software requirement analysis and specification, that is SRS. So, and this is also of 25 marks. So, why we study the software engineering, or what is the requirement to study this software? So, many projects have failed because, so what is the failure factors behind any of the software? So, they started to develop without adequately determining whether they are building what the customer really wanted. So, actually first main goal is to satisfy the customer in any software project. So, if we have failed in satisfying the customer requirements, that is a failure, that is the foremost failure of any of the project. So, that is why, so what the customer is needed, what the customer is wanted, that is to be satisfied. So, if that is to be fulfilled, then your project becomes 100% good. So, what is the customer needed, or what is the customer requirement? So, here I already explained one diagram in the last chapter. So, this is a diagram. So, what the customer explained, so this is what the customer explained, so in this format, but ultimate result the customer needed, and this is needed factor. So, in between all the diagram there is a lot of changes during the management side irbodu, athwa programmer side irbodu, or the installation side irbodu, everything is to be changed. So, ultimate, when the project is going to be ready, if the customer is not satisfied, then your software project become failure. If the customer is satisfied, then your project becomes success. So, this is what the requirement. So, requirement is a capability or condition required from the system. So, what the customer is needed from that particular system, that is what the capability or the condition belongs to that requirement. So, what is involved in RAS, requirement analysis specification? So, what exactly involved RAS? Determine what is expected by the client from the system. Second, document those in a form that is clear to the client as well as to the development team members. So, ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಪೋಸಲ್ ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು ಕ್ಲೈಂಟಿಗೆ ಏನು ಅವಶ್ಯಕತೆ ಇದೆ, ಯಾವ ಪ್ರಪೋಸಲ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅದನ್ನು ಫಸ್ಟು ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಕ್ಲೈಂಟಿಗೆ ವಾಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ ದ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಅಂತ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಬೇಕು. ಸೊ, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ಸ್. ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್, ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್ ನಾವು ಹೇಗೆ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಗಿ ಇರಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ಅದು ಕ್ಲೈಂಟಿಗೂ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಬೇಕು, ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಟೀಮ್ ಮೆಂಬರ್ಸಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಬೇಕು. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ step involved in the requirement analysis specification. If that is not clear, then what is the project, or what is the programmer, or what is the development team members do, we are not knowing. So, if that is to be clear, then the team members or the client should be happy. Yeah, this is the activities in RAS. First thing, you should gather all the requirements that is to be needed for that particular software. Then the requirement analysis, if that requirement is used for that particular software is necessary or not. Then the requirement specification, and last the SRS document. You should maintain all the documents that you have needed for that particular software. So, this is what the requirement engineering. And the service, the process of establishing the service that. So, what are the services to be followed? One is the customer requires from a system and the constraint under which it operates and it is developed. First and foremost, what is the system we are using, and what is the constraints that it operates and it develops. So, that is the services you need to understand it in the requirement engineering. Second, that requirement themselves are the description of. So, what are the documents to be maintained? System services, and the one is constraints that are generated during requirement engineering process. So, that all should be documented, and that says the description regarding the requirements. Next is, what do you mean by exactly the requirement analysis and specification? I said the activities, 4 activities in the RAS, that is requirement gathering, requirements analysis, requirement specification, and the SRS document. So, in that requirement gathering, fully understand the user requirements. What exactly the user need, that is to be gathered first. That is the requirement gathering, means collecting all the requirements and understand fully. Requirement analysis means remove inconsistencies, anomalies, etc. from the requirements. What is the thing it is not valid or inconsistency ittu antandre, that is to be removed from that analysis or the requirement analysis. Then requirement specification means document. Document requirements properly in our SRS document. Once you have collect all the requirements or all the analysis, you should maintain all the document regarding SRS. Then SRS, what is exactly the SRS? Software requirement specification is known as a SRS. So it establishes the basis for agreement between the client and the supplier on what the software product will do. So what exactly the software is going to do. So that is to be understood by both the client and supplier. ಸೊ ಎರಡೂ ಕಡೆ ನಾವೇನು ಅಗ್ರಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಂತ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತೀವಲ್ಲ, ಸೊ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಎಸ್ಟಾಬ್ಲಿಷಸ್ ದ SRS establishes that agreement between client as well as the supplier, and it also provides a reference for validation and the final product. So once the company gives all the requirements that the customer need, and it also refer the validity or the validation regarding the final product. So if the quality, a high quality SRS is a prerequisite to high quality software. When you are compromised with the quality, then you are not getting the 100% final product. So you should not compromise with the quality. So then ಕ್ವಾಲಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ SRS ಜೊತೆ ಕಾಂಪ್ರಮೈಸ್ ಆಗದೇ ಹೈ ಕ್ವಾಲಿಟಿ SRSನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅಂದರೆ, ಸೊ ಫೈನಲ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಬಿ ದ ಕ್ವಾಲಿಟಿ product. Then high quality SRS reduces the development cost. Yes, ಸೊ ನಾವು ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟನ್ನ ಫಸ್ಟಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು, ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಬಿಹೈಂಡ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್, ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಕ್ವಾಲಿಟಿ ಅಂತೆಲ್ಲ ಮುಂಚೆನೇ ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ವಿ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಇಟ್ ರೆಡ್ಯೂಸಸ್ ದ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್ ಈಸ್ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್, ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್ ಈಸ್ ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟೆಡ್, ಸೊ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ರೆಡ್ಯೂಸಸ್ ದ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್. So next is components of an SRS. In that, this is one diagram regarding components of an SRS. In that, software requirement specification documents, it contains a functional requirements, performance requirement, external interfaces, design constraints. So everything of all the combination of these four will get the software requirement specification documents. So if you maintain the document, SRS document means you should collect the functional requirements, performance requirement, design constraint and the external interfaces. And this is a format of SRS. In that, what is the format and what is to be documented? One is product overview and summary, development, operating and maintenance environment, external interfaces and data flow, functional requirements, performance, exception handling, early subset and implementation and priorities. So ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು, ಈಗ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ವೇರ್ ಅಥವಾ ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ ಡೇಟಾಬೇಸಿಂದ ಒಂದು ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ವೇರ್ ರೆಡಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ಓವರಾಲ್ overview and the summary you should maintain first, and how we are going to develop means in which platform or which in language, how the system is going to be operate and how it is to be maintained, the environment or the platforms. So or else external interfaces is needed or not, and regarding that, what is the data flow of that particular software, then the functional requirements, what is the performance and exception handling, so and implementation and the which is more prior while doing the software project. So these are all the formats of SRS document. So then next is forcible modification and enhancement, acceptance criteria, design hints and guidelines, cross reference index, glossary of themes. So these are all the format of SRS. Next is characteristics of an SRS. So there are some of the characteristics mentioned here. One is understandable, unambiguous, complete, verifiable, consistent, modifiable and traceable. Let's see one by one regarding this characteristics of good SRS. In that, first is correct. Every requirement given in SRS is a requirement of the software. It should be correct. So there is no complication regarding the SRS gathering or the SRS requirement. So it should be correct. What the requirement is to be collected, it should be correct. that is second is unambiguous. Every requirement has exactly one interpretation. There is no duplication. Duplication ittu antandre unambiguous create agutte. So you should avoid all the unambiguous factors. Then complete. It includes all functional, performance, design, external interfaces requirements, definition of response of the software to all inputs. What is the thing or what is the requirements that needed, that should be completely gathered or completely collected. So in that includes functional requirements irbodu, performance irbodu, design part irbodu, or response of all the inputs irbodu, everything should be completed. Then consistent, so internal consistency. So ups and downs not allowed. So ಕನ್ಸಿಸ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಅದು ವರ್ಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಈ ಊರಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾದರೂ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಯಿತು ಅಂದರೆ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ನೆಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ನೆಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾದರೂ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆದರೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಕನ್ಸಿಸ್ಟೆಂಟಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಯು ಶುಡ್ ಅವಾಯ್ಡ್ ಆಲ್ ದ negative factors. Then ranked importance, essential versus desirable. So you should be collect all the essential factors that is more important in this thing, or for the characteristics of a good SRS. Then verifiable. So verifiable means a requirement is verifiable if and only if there exists some finite cost effective process with which a person or a machine can check that the software meets the requirement. So verification, verifiable means verification in how much percentage did the customer requirements is fulfilled, or how many manpower is needed, what is the machine power you want to know. So all the finite cost effectiveness is verified, so that is a verifiable. Then modifiable, if any changes. So SRS must be structured to permit effective modification. Don't be redundant, keep requirements separate. Yes, it can be used for the further modification irbodu, effect for further performance ige you can use for the further modification. Then traceable, origin of each requirement is clear. So once you have collected all the requirements, that should be clear, that is to be traceable. And next is software requirement specification. Terms alli it defines customer requirements ಏನೇನು ಬೇಕು, what is the customer side requirements. So in that function, performance, external interfaces, design constraints. So what is the customer need means it functions properly, performance is good, external interface is working correct, then the design constraint is fulfilled. So these are all the things to be considered for the requirements of the customer side. And the SRS is a basis of contract between the purchaser and the supplier. Then SRS prototype outline. So once you have collect all the need and all the documents, what are the standards or what are the outlines to be considered. For example, as you all see in your book, the index anta bandaga introduction. So in that, what is the thing in that particular introduction. So for example, this is chapter 1 and 1.1 alli ಏನು ನಾವು ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, 1.2 ಏನು, 1.3 ಏನು. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಆಲ್ ದ SRS ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಯಾವುದೇ ನೀವು ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಬುಕ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, IEEE ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ನ ತೆಗೆದು ನೋಡಿದಾಗ, ಸೊ ಇನ್ ದಿಸ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ದೇ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಮೇಂಟೈನ್ಡ್ ಆಲ್ ದ SRS ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್. ಎಸ್, ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದಟ್ ಪರ್ಪಸ್, ಸ್ಕೋಪ್, ಓವರ್ ವ್ಯೂ ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ಪರ್ಪಸ್ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಯು ಆರ್ ಡೂಯಿಂಗ್. So that is what the specification. The scope means nowadays the software yak ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ, what is the scope, then describes the benefits ಇರ್ಬೋದು, goals ಇರ್ಬೋದು, objectives ಇರ್ಬೋದು, that is what the scope. Overview means ಹೇಗೆ ಅದನ್ನು ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಹೇಗೆ ಅದನ್ನು ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ, that is what the overview. Yeah, in this also second point anta tagondaga general description, in that product perspective, product function summary, user characteristics. So these are all the example of SRS standards to be maintained. So and the third is specific requirements, functional requirements and external interfaces requirements, performance requirements and so on. At the last, appendices and the index. ಯಾವುದೇ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಬುಕ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ನೀವು ಮಾಡುವಂಥ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ರಿಪೋರ್ಟ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, these all the standards should be maintained. Yeah, next is types of requirements. In that there are mainly two types. One is functional and the one is non-functional requirements. Functional requirements is statements of services the system should provide, how the system should react to particular inputs and how the system should behave particular situation. So according to the input, what is the output we get, or according to that particular situation, what is the output we get. So that is what the functional requirements. So ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟಿಗೆ ಅದರದ್ದು ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಯಾವ ಥರ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ದ ಫಂಕ್ಷನಲ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ನಾನ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನಲ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್? ಕನ್ಸ್ಟೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆನ್ ದ ಸರ್ವಿಸಸ್ ಆರ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಆಫರ್ಡ್ ಬೈ ದ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಸಚ್ ಆಸ್ ಟೈಮಿಂಗ್ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟೆಂಟ್, constraints on the development process, standards, etc. So often apply to the system as a whole rather than individual features or services. So for taking any of the software project, you should maintain all the security, all the reliability constraints, all the availability constraints, and how we are going to maintain all the things. So all this comes under the non-functional. What are the constraints or the development process yav tara irutte? So these are all the non-functional requirement. Yes, in brief, functional requirements are description of data to be entered into the system, description of operation performed by each screen, description of workflows performed by the system, and the system reports or other outputs, who can enter the data, how the system meets applicable regulatory requirements. So these are all the description ಏನು ನಾವು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, that is the functional requirements. ವರ್ಕ್ಫ್ಲೋ ಹೇಗಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಎಷ್ಟು ಡೇಟಾ ಎಂಟ್ರಿ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಯಾವ ಡೇಟಾ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಎಂಟ್ರಿ ಆಯಿತು, ಹೇಗದು ಆಪ್ರೇಟ್ ಆಯಿತು, ದೆನ್ ಹೇಗದು ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ನ ಅಪ್ಲಿಕೇಬಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತು ಟು ಮೀಟ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಕಸ್ಟಮರ್ ನೀಡ್. ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ಆಲ್ ದ ಫಂಕ್ಷನಲ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್. And here some of the example regarding functional requirements. One is interface requirements, business requirements, regulatory compliance requirement. So and in the case of second one, library system irbodu, ATM cash withdrawal irbodu. So in that library system, search book function, one the software na ready madirthivi. As in your library also there is one software to find out whether the book is there or not. ಸೊ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಆಥರ್ ನೇಮ್ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಇಲ್ಲಾಂದರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಕೋಡ್ ಅಂತ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತೀವಿ. ಆ ಕೋಡ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟ ತಕ್ಷಣ ವೆದರ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಎಂಟರ್ಡ್ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್, ಆರ್ ದ ಬುಕ್ ಈಸ್ ಅವೈಲೇಬಲ್ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಟು ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಗೆಟಿಂಗ್ ದ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಫಂಕ್ಷನಲ್, ಆ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ವರ್ಕ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ. ATM ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ವಿಡ್ರಾಲಲ್ಲೂ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಕೂಡ ನೀವು ಇನ್ ವಿಚ್ ಸೇವಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಅಕೌಂಟಾ, ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಅಕೌಂಟಾ ಅಂತ ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಆಫ್ಟರ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಮೂವ್ ಆರ್ ಇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಆಸ್ಕ್ ಯುವರ್ ATM ಪಿನ್. ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಸರಿ ಮೋರ್ ಸೆಕ್ಯೂರಿಗೋಸ್ಕರ ಸಮ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಡಿಜಿಟ್ನ ಎಂಟರ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತ ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ. Then that is the what functions. So if that is all the functions ಏನು ನೀವು ಎಂಟರ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಂತ ಆಯಿತು ಅಂತಂದರೆ then you can take a money. Otherwise if the pin is not working, so that is you cannot withdraw the money. So that is you can get an error message. So that is what the functional requirement. Yeah, here also ATM cash withdrawal ಇಂದು ಅದನ್ನೇ ತೊಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೆಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ ಟೈಪ್, ಗೆಟ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಡ್ ಅಮೌಂಟ್, ದ ಸೇಮ್ ಥಿಂಗ್. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಅ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ವರ್ಕ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಹಿಯರ್ ಕಮ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ ನಾನ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನಲ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ಹಿಯರ್ ಯು ಶುಡ್ ಮೇನ್ಲಿ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಟ್ ಆನ್ ದ ಮೇಂಟೈನಬಿಲಿಟಿ, ಪೋರ್ಟಬಿಲಿಟಿ, ಯೂಸಬಿಲಿಟಿ, ಸೆಕ್ಯೂರಿಟಿ, ಸೇಫ್ಟಿ, ರಿಲಯಬಿಲಿಟಿ, ಪರ್ಫಾರ್ಮೆನ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ಆಲ್ ದ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ದ ನಾನ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನಲ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ಈಗ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಹೌ ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ದ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್, ಎಷ್ಟು ಟೈಮ್ ಲೆಸ್ ತೊಗೊಳುತ್ತೆ ಅಥವಾ ಎಷ್ಟು ಫಾಸ್ಟಾಗಿ ಅದು ವರ್ಕ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನು ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ವೆರಿಫೈ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ದ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ರಿಗಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ದ ನಾನ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನಲ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಸೊ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಫಾರ್ 1 ಸೆಕೆಂಡಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು, 1 ಮಿನಿಟಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ವರ್ಕ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಅಥವಾ 1 ಅವರಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ವರ್ಕ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ದ ನಾನ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನಲ್ requirement. So here are some of the example regarding the non-functional requirements. In that non-functional requirement, there is again 3 main major things. One is product requirement, organizational requirement, external requirement, delivery requirement, implementation requirements, and the standard requirements. According to the product requirement, there is again some of the bifurcation. One is usability, efficiency, reliability, portability. Organization requirements again delivery, implementation, and the standard. Again, external requirements, interoperability, ethically and legislative. So in that efficiency, performance, space, again legislative means privacy and the safety. So these are all comes under the non-functional requirements. So yeah, here the constraints we are using in the non-functional requirements: hardware to be used, operating system ಯಾವ್ದು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ, DBMS ಯಾವ್ದು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ, then capabilities of input-output devices, standard compliance, then data representation by the interfaced system. So these are all comes under the non-functional requirements. Wow. Reliability means error free, performance means response time or the response requirement, then what is the throughput you are getting, means 1 second or 1 minute how much work it will be finished at that particular time. So and the security means whether it is more secure and the data unauthorized users it is not allowed. Then the safety is if that is not safety, then the user should not be taken, or it doesn't meet the user requirement. And usability, and it is easy to use to all the users. So these are all the things we'll see in the non-functional requirement especially. So remaining concepts will do it in the later video. Thank you.